Hello my dear students, welcome to my channel CBSE Tutorials. In this video, I'll make you able to make internal questions from your chapter number 3, Separation of Substances from your NCERT science book. Let's begin with first paragraph. In our daily life, there are many instances when we notice a substance being separated from a mixture from materials, like tea leaves are separated from liquid with a strainer. So, your question number 1 is how tea leaves are separated from the liquid. Very simple. With the help of a strainer. You can see in this picture that the tea leaves, they are separated from this liquid which you call tea with the help of strainer, right? Now next one, grain is separated from stalks while harvesting. What is harvesting? Cutting of mature crop is known as harvesting. So we need only grains like rice, wheat. So they are separated from their stalks while harvesting. Now milk or curd is churned to separate the butter. By which process we are separating butter from the milk? By churning. Okay. We gain cotton to separate its seeds from the fiber. So now here question is how we get cotton from its seeds. So answer is by ginning. Okay. This is your question number 2. Next, perhaps you might have eaten salted dalia or poha. If you found that it had chilies in it, you may have carefully taken them out before eating. Suppose you are given a basket containing mangoes and guavas and asked to separate them, what would you do? Pick out one kind and place them in separate container, right? Seems easy, but if the materials we want to separate are much smaller than mango or guava, imagine you and are given a glass of sand with salt mixed in it. Here question is, how will you separate sand mixed with salt? Okay, this is impossible even to think separating salt from this mixture by picking out grains of sand by hand. So here the question of Paheli is, but why would we need to separate substances like this at all? Is what Paheli wants to know. So we need to separate impurities. Okay, answer is we need to separate impurities to obtain useful substances, right? Now in activity 1, in column 1 of table 3.1 are given few process of separations. These are few process of separation given in your next page, and however the information given in column 2 and 3 is jumbled up. Can you match each? This is the table. Why do we separate substances? Separation processes are separate stones from rice. What is the purpose for this? To separate two different but useful components. Now, what do we do with the separated components? We throw away the solid component. Next one, churning milk to obtain butter. To remove non-useful components, we throw away the impurities. Third one, separate tea leaves to remove impurities or harmful components. Now we use both the components. We are using the tea leaves for making of manure by composting, right? And we drink tea. We drink liquid part of the tea. The solid part, tea leaves, they are used to make manure, and the liquid part, we drink that part. Okay, we take tea. Now, we see that before we use a substance, we need to separate harmful or non useful substances that may be mixed with it. This is the purpose of separation. Now, what is the purpose of separation? We use a substance, we need to separate harmful or non useful substances that may be mixed with it. Sometimes we separate even useful components if we need to use them separately. For example, the substances to be separated may be particles of different sizes or materials. These may be in any three states of matter: solid, liquid, or gas. So, how do we separate substances mixed together if there are so many different properties? They are having different properties, but there are various methods of separation also. We will discuss some simple methods of separating substances that are mixed together. You may come across some of these methods being used in day-to-day activities. For example, number one, hand picking. Now, question is, for what substances we use the process of hand picking? Now here, very simple answer. This method of hand picking can be used for separating slightly larger sized impurities like the pieces of dirt, stone, husk from wheat, rice, or pulses. Now, the quantity of such impurities is usually not very large. In such situations, we find that hand picking is convenient method of separating substances. We are separating what? We are separating slightly larger sized impurities. For example, this man is uh, picking up sand, so very small size particles of dust or small size stones from the useful component, right? From the grains. Now, next, very important topic, threshing. Now, you must have seen bundles of wheat or paddy stalks lying in the fields after harvesting the crop. Now stalks are dried in the sun before the grain is separated from them. So drying of stalks, it is necessary to separate the grain from them. Okay? If the stalks they are not dried completely, then what happen? Then the grains they are not separated properly. Okay, so drying is very important. Now each stalk has many grain seeds attached to it. Now this is one stalk and many grains are attached to it like this. Imagine the number of grains, seeds, hundreds of bundles of stalk lying in the field. How does the farmer separate grain seeds from those bundles of stalks? Now one may pluck mangoes or guavas from the trees, but grain seeds are much smaller than mangoes or guavas. So plucking them from their stalks would be impossible. How does one separate grain seeds from their stalks? Now here is the process by which we can separate grain from stalks, etc. That is threshing. So question is what is threshing? Question is what is threshing? The process that is used to separate grain from stalks is known as threshing. In this process, the stalks are beaten to free the grain seeds. So, what we are doing in this process? We are beating the stalks. We are beating the stalks to free the grains. Now, you come to understand that why drying of stalk is important, because dried stalks when are beaten they can easily free the grain seeds. Okay? If the stalks are not dry, then there is difficulty to free the grain seeds, right? Sometimes threshing is done with the help of bullocks, right? Now, in modern time, machines are also used to thresh large quantities of grain, and the machines which are used to uh, thresh large quantity of grains, they are known as threshers. They are known as threshers. Now, winnowing. Activity 3, make a mixture of dry sand with sawdust or powdered dry leaves. Keep this mixture on a plate or a newspaper. Look at this mixture carefully. Can the two different components be made out easily? Are the size of particles of the two components similar? Would it be possible to separate the components by hand picking? Now take your mixture to an open ground and stand on a raised platform. What is the first condition of winnowing? You have to take the mixture to an open ground. This is first important step. Second one, stand on a raised platform, right? Then third one, put the mixture in a plate or sheet of paper. Fourth one, hold the plate or sheet of paper containing the mixture at your shoulder height. Now, fifth one, tilt it slightly so that the mixture slides out slowly. Now, what happens? What happens here? Do both the components sand and sawdust or fall at the same place? No. Why? Because sand is heavier than sawdust. Sawdust is lighter than sand. So sawdust, look here. Here is a picture. The woman is standing on a raised platform, and in her hand she is having sawdust mixed with sand, right? Or the grains are there, husk is there. Now in this soup, mixture is present. Now slightly she is tilting, the last step, tilting slightly so that the mixture slide out slowly. So being heavy, the sand or the grains what is present in the mixture, that falls nearby, okay, nearby, and the light substance with the help of blowing air, it falls at a distance, right? This is the process of winnowing actually. Now is there a component that blows away? Yes, lighter one. Did the wind manage to separate the two components? Answer is yes. Now, what is winnowing? Again, very important question. The method of separating components of a mixture is known as winnowing. Your question is what here? What is winnowing? Answer is method of separating components of a mixture is known as winnowing. Uh, you can continue with this line also. Winnowing is used to separate heavier and lighter components. What is the first condition which is necessary for the process of winnowing? That the two components, one should be heavier and other should be lighter. Now with the help of wind or by blowing air, we can perform this process. Now this method is commonly used by farmers to separate lighter husk particles from heavier seeds of grain. Now this can be asked in your examination. Give one use of winnowing. So farmers, they are using this method. Okay, they separate light husk particles from heavy seeds of grain. So this is very important. We are separating husk from the seeds of grain by the process of winnowing. Now the husk particles are carried away by the wind. As I told you earlier, the seeds of grain get separated from a heap near the platform. For winnowing, the separated husk is used for many purposes such as fodder for cattle. Again, very important question. What is the use of husk? Husk is used for many purposes. Number one, as a fodder for kettles. This is very important. Okay. So don't write here number 1. Husk is used for many purposes. For example, one of the main purposes fodder for kettles. Right? Now next one is sieving. Next one is sieving. Sometimes we may wish to prepare a dish with flour. Okay. We need to remove impurities and bran that may be present in it. Okay. So what do? We use a sieve. We use a sieve. This is a sieve, right? This one is sieve. What we call this? Write down here. Very intelligent students, all of you are. This is sieve, right? Now, sieving allows the fine flour particles to pass through the holes. Look here, the fine particles, they are passing through the holes, right? While the bigger impurities, they remain on the sieve. Clear? In a flour mill, impurities like husk and stones are removed from wheat before grinding it. Usually a bag full of wheat is poured on a slanting sieve. The sieving removes pieces of stones. Very important function again. The sieving removes pieces of stone, stalk and husk that may still remain with wheat after threshing and winnowing. So you may have also noticed similar sieves being used at construction sites. Very important other. First important role is that we are passing the flour particles through the holes of sieve, while the bigger impurities, they are separated from the flour. Second important use is at construction sites. Now, what are the construction sites, my little champs? You know very well that where the work of constructing building, houses is done, that those sites are known as construction sites, right? Now look here, a laborer, he is just sieving in order to remove pebbles and stones from sand. Okay, so what's the method to remove pebbles and stones from sand? Method is sieving, right? So at construction sites, this method is used to separate pebbles and stone from sand. Again, very important. Now activity 4. Bring a sieve and a small quantity of flour from home to the class. Sieve the flour to separate any impurities. You can do this with the help of your teacher. Sieving is used when components of mixture have different sizes. This is the condition of sieving. One should be very fine and other should be little bit larger than that size. Okay. Now next one is sedimentation, decantation and filtration. Sometimes it may not be possible to separate components of mixture by winnowing and hand picking. For example, there may be lighter impurities like dust or soil particles in rice or pulses. How are such impurities separated from rice or pulses before cooking? So it is very important, and your NCERT question is also there, that how are some impurities separated from rice or pulses before cooking. So rice or pulses are usually washed before cooking, right? You can ask from your mothers also that how they are doing before cooking. Here come rice or pulses. Both of them, they are usually washed before cooking, right? When you add water to these, the impurities like dust particles get separated. Now these impurities go into water. Now what will sink to the bottom of the vessel? What will sink? Yes, the heavier one. For example, rice, right? Rice will sink to the bottom of the vessel and dust comes to the surface. Have you seen that the vessel is tilted to pour out the dirty water? Yes. When the heavier component in a mixture settles after water is added to it, that process is known as sedimentation. Now here very important question. What is sedimentation? Very important. My dear student, what is sedimentation? When the heavier component like rice in a mixture settles after water is added to it, that process is called sedimentation. Simply settling of sediment at the bottom when water is added is known as sedimentation. And what is decantation? Again, very important question. When the water along with the dust is removed, when the water along with dust is removed, this process is called decantation. For example, look here. I'm doing here. This is a container and rice. I'm going to wash the rice. I'm adding water to it. What happens? Rice being heavier settles down at the bottom and the impurities, they are present in the water. Now what next I will do? This is known as sedimentation. Now next step, I'll pour this dirty water into outside, right? And this process is known as what? Decantation. Okay, when water along with the dust is removed, that is known as decantation. Clear? I hope you can understand very well. Let us find a few other mixtures that can be separated through sedimentation and decantation. The same principle is used for separating a mixture of two liquids that do not mix with each other. For example, oil and water from their mixture. They can be separated by this process. If a mixture of such liquids is allowed to stand for some time, they form two separate layers. The component that forms top layer and can be separated by decantation. Very important question. How oil and water mixture is separated. Okay, so when oil and water which are not miscible, and that do not mix with each other, they can easily separated by the process of decantation because two layers are formed here. Let us again consider a mixture of solid and liquid preparing tea from the tea leaves. Now we are going to we use strainer to remove tea leaves usually, ऐसा ही होता है, but try decantation. It helps a little, but do you still get a few leaves in your tea? Now pour the tea through a strainer. Did all the tea leaves remain in the strainer? This process is known as filtration. We are using here filter paper, right? Let us now consider two example of water that all of us all times get safe water to drink. Okay, the water collected from ponds or rivers may also be muddy, especially after rains. So, in activity 5, collect some muddy water from a pond or a river. If it is not available, mix some soil to water in a glass. Let it stand for half an hour. Observe the water carefully and note your observations. Does some soil settle at the bottom of water? Why? Because it is heavier. Okay, soil is heavier than water. What will you call this process? Sedimentation. Now slightly tilt the glass without disturbing the water. Let the water from the top flow into another glass. This process is known as what? Decantation. Is the water in the second glass still muddy or brown in color? No. Now filter it. Some impurities are also present in the decanted water. They may go with the water. Okay. Now, did this tea strainer work here? No. Let us try filtering the water through a piece of cloth. In a piece of cloth, small holes or pores remain in between the woven threads. These pores in a cloth can be used as a filter. If the water is still muddy, impurities can be separated by a filter that has even a filter paper is one such filter that has very fine pores in it. So what is the filter paper? Define filter paper. Filter paper is one such filter that has very fine pores in it. Now figure 3.9 showing the steps involved in the using of filter paper. A filter paper folded in the form of a cone is fixed into a funnel. Look here. The mixture is then poured to the filter paper. Solid particles in the mixture do not pass through it, remain on the filter, and in this way we separate the impurities Fruit and vegetable juices are usually filtered before drinking to separate the seeds and solid particles of pulp. The method of filtration is also used in the process of preparing cottage cheese paneer in our homes. So this is very important question again. Which process is used in preparing cottage cheese paneer in our homes? We are using cloth for that. That process is what? Filtration. Very important. Listen carefully. You might have seen that for making paneer, a few drops of lemon juice are added to milk as it boils. This gives a mixture of particles of solid paneer and a liquid. A paneer is then separated by filtering the mixture through a fine cloth or a strainer. Very important. My dear student, you have done the activity of preparing paneer at home also. Recall that activity. Next one, evaporation. Activity 6. Add 2 spoons of salt to water in another beaker and stir it well. Okay, add 2 spoons of salt to water in another beaker and stir it well. Do you see any change in the color of water? Do you see any change in the color of water if you are adding 2 spoons of salt to water? No. Can you see any salt in the beaker? No. After stirring, heat the beaker containing the salty water. Let the water boil away. What is left in the beaker? If the water is boiling, what is left in the beaker? In this activity, we use the process of evaporation to separate a mixture of water and salt. So how can we separate a mixture of water and salt? By the process of evaporation. Right? Good. Now here is the definition of evaporation. Define evaporation. The process of conversion of water into its vapor form is known as evaporation. It's very important part of water cycle also. The process of evaporation takes place continuously wherever water is present. Where do you think salt comes from? Yes, seawater contains many salts mixed in it. One of these salts is the common salt. When seawater is allowed to stand in a shallow pits, listen carefully. We are making here seabeds near the sea. Okay? Little seabeds, many seabeds. When seawater is allowed to stand in shallow pits, not so deep. Shallow means not so deep. Okay? When seawater is allowed to stand in shallow pits, water gets heated by sunlight and slowly turns into water vapor through evaporation. In a few days, the water evaporates completely, leaving behind the solid salts. So, common salt is then obtained from the mixture of salts by further purification. Now, next, look here the diagram. Here, seabeds are formed, shallow pits are there. Now, salty water is allowed to stand here. When sun comes, with the heat of sun, the water becomes hot and convert into vapors, and what's left behind? Salt left behind, right? Now, use of more than one method of separation. We have studied some methods for separation of substances from their mixtures. One method is not sufficient to separate the different substances. So in this situation, we use more methods. Activity 7, take a mixture of sand and salt. What we are taking a mixture of sand and salt. How will you separate these? We already saw that hand picking would not be practical method for separating these. Keep this mixture in a beaker and add some water to it. Leave the beaker aside from the some time. Do you see sand settling down at the bottom? The sand can be separated by the decantation or filtration. Now, very important. We are separating here sand by the process of decantation or filtration. What does the decanted liquid contain? Obviously, salt. Do you think the water, the salt which was there in the mixture at the beginning? Now we need to separate salt. So what we do? Transfer this liquid to kettle and close the lid. Heat the kettle for some time. Do you notice steam coming out of the from the spout of the kettle? What is that? Evaporation. Take a metal plate with some ice on it. Hold the plate just above the spout of the kettle as shown in the what you observe. Let all the water in the kettle boil off. When the steam comes in contact with the metal plate cooled with ice, it condenses. Now here very important process. Condensation is going on and forms liquid water. The water drops that you observed falling from the plate were due to condensation of steam. Now, what is condensation? Very important. Listen carefully, little champs. The process of conversion of water vapor into its liquid form is known as condensation, and this is very important question. What is condensation? The process of conversion of water vapor into its liquid form on cooling is known as condensation. Just opposite of evaporation. Did you ever see water drops condensed under a plate that had been used to cover a vessel containing a milk? For example, look here. Look here. Simply, we are boiling water in the kettle. Then this boiled water after boiling converted into vapors. Evaporation is done. Now these vapors when come in contact with a surface having ice on it, the water vapor cools down and again this vapor they are converting into water droplets. This is known as condensation. So this diagram is the best example of evaporation and condensation, right? Can water dissolve any amount of substance? In chapter 2, we found that many substances dissolve in water form a solution. We say that these substances are soluble in water. What will happen if we go on adding more and more of these substances to a fixed quantity of water? Now, what will happen? You will need a beaker or small pan, spoon, salt and water. Pour half cup of water in a beaker. Add 1 teaspoon of salt and stir it well. Again add a teaspoon of salt. Again add. After adding a few spoons of salt, do you find that some salt remains undissolved and settles at the bottom of the beaker? Yes. If yes, this means that no more salt can be dissolved in the amount of water we have taken. The solution is now said to be saturated. Now what is saturated solution? Your question is, what is saturated solution? A solution in which no more solute can be dissolved. That solution is known as saturated solution. Here is a hint as to what might have gone wrong when Paheli tried to recover large quantity of salt mixed with sand. Perhaps the quantity of salt was much more than that required to form a saturated solution. The undissolved salt would have remained mixed with the sand and could not be recovered. She could solve her problem by using a large quantity of water. We increase the volume of solvent. Suppose she did not have sufficient quantities of water to dissolve all the salt in the mixture. Is there some way? Yes, we can heat the saturated solution to add more solute. Okay. Now activity 9. Take some water in a beaker and mix salt in it until it cannot dissolve any more salt. This will give you a saturated solution of salt in water. Now add a small quantity of salt to this saturated solution and heat it. What do you find? What happens to the undissolved salt in the bottom of the beaker? Does it dissolve now? If yes, can some more salt be dissolved in this solution by heating it? Yes. Yes. So we can dissolve more in a saturated solution just by heating the solution. Let this hot solution cool. Does the salt appear to settle at the bottom of the beaker again? This activity suggests that larger quantity of salt can be dissolved in water on heating. Very important, underline it. Larger quantity of salt can be dissolved in water on heating. Now, does water dissolve equal amount of different soluble substances? Let us find out. Activity 10. Take 2 glasses and pour half a cup of water in each of them. Add a teaspoon of salt to 1 glass and stir till the salt dissolves. Go on adding salt 1 teaspoon at a time till the solution saturates. Now, record the number of spoons of salt that dissolved in the water. Now repeat the same activity with sugar. What do you notice? Do you find that water dissolves different substances in different amounts? We have discussed a few methods of separating substances. Some of the methods of separating presented in the chapter are also used in the science laboratory. Now here you can write down how many spoons of salt they are dissolved in the same quantity of water and how many spoons of sugar they are dissolved in water. So you can find out the difference whether they are same or different. We also learned that a solution is prepared by dissolving a substance in a liquid. So a solution is said to be saturated if it cannot dissolve more of substance in it. If a solution is not able to dissolve more of the substance in it, then the solution is saturated. Okay, and solution is prepared by dissolving a substance in a liquid. That substance is known as solute and liquid is known as solvent. Now these are the keywords: churning, condensation, decantation, evaporation, filtration, hand picking. Just learn the spellings of all these and definitions also. I hope you understand well. Thank you for your patience. Now have a look on these exercises. Why do we need to separate different components of mixture? Just to get the useful components. Give two examples. We are separating grains from the husk. Okay. Now we are separating pebbles from the sand on construction sites. These are the two examples. What is winnowing? The process of separating the lighter and heavier substances mixtures is known as winnowing, and we are using blowing air here. With the help of air it is possible. Moving air, that is wind. What is it? Where is it used? It is used to separate grains from the husk. Okay, or husk from the grains. You can write vice versa. Question number 3. How will you separate husk or dirt particles from a given sample of pulses before cooking? By the process of sedimentation and decantation, right? What is sieving? The process of separating larger impurities with the help of sieve. One should be of smaller size. For example, you can separate the bran from the flour by the process of sieving. Where is it used? It is used to separate the bran or larger particles from the floor. And number 2, it is also used in construction sites to separate out pebbles from the sand. How will you separate sand and water from their mixture? Not sand and water, they can be separated by the process of decantation as well as evaporation, right? Is it possible to separate sugar mixed with wheat flour? If yes, how will you do it? If sugar is mixed in the wheat flour, we can separate it by the process of sieving, right? We can separate it by the process of sieving, because wheat flour is very fine particle and sugar have some size bigger than wheat flour. Now, how would you obtain clear water from sample of muddy water? How would you obtain clear water from a sample of muddy water? That is by the process of decantation. You can add sedimentation also. Now, fill up the blanks. The method of separating seeds of paddy from its stalk is known as what? Threshing. When milk cooled after boiling is poured into a piece of cloth, the malai is left behind on it. This process of separating cream from milk is an example of filtration. Salt is obtained from seawater by the process of evaporation. Impurities settled at the bottom when muddy water was kept overnight in a bucket. The clear water was then poured from off the top. The process is known as what? Decantation. True or false? A mixture of milk and water can be separated by filtration. This is false. A mixture of powdered salt and sugar can be separated by the process of winnowing. False. Now part C. Separation of sugar from tea can be done with filtration. Separation of sugar from tea can be done with filtration. It is false. Grain and husk can be separated with the process of decantation. True. Lemonade is prepared by mixing lemon juice and sugar in water. You wish to add ice to cool it. Should you add ice to lemonade before or after dissolving sugar? In which case would it be possible to dissolve more sugar? We should add the ice after dissolving the sugar. In this case, it would be possible to dissolve more sugar, right? I hope you enjoyed this video very much, and it will be very fruitful for your final exams also. So listen the video again and again till you understand the concepts clearly. Thank you for your patience. Have a nice day.